Welcome back, everybody. I don't know if should I add a jingle to the beginning of these podcasts? I feel like, ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba. I don't know. Fuck, that was cringy. Anyway, it's Thursday, the 12th of January. We're on day number 12. I have had a rather lazy day today. I've got a lot more energy probably than what you can tell most days I jump on these podcasts, and I do. It is because it's 1:17 p.m. I have left doing this podcast really late, and it really frustrates me because in the morning I have to get up and it's just whatever the first thing that pops in my head I just talk about. Pardon me. And some days I can be emotional, some days I can be angry, some days I can be happy, some days I can be hanging out, but I just talk shit. And so today I've been sitting here racking my brain on what to talk about, and I just cannot I can't think of anything. I can't think of shit. And yeah, I don't know. I because I don't want this podcast to just be a somber thing where all I'm talking about all the time is negative or like, even like, I don't know, melancholy. I want to say that. Like I don't want to say things that are just always have this connotation of sadness, or like frustration, or you know what I mean. I just feel like I always melancholy, pensive sadness, typically with no obvious cause. So I just don't want my thoughts, I don't want this to be a reflective piece where I'm just sitting here constantly meditating on the bad, and the ugly instead of the good, but I think being a reflective piece and being a piece that is sort of hinged on vulnerability, it becomes challenging to talk about the positive because you really only learn from the negative, right? Like if things are going good, you're probably not going to learn. Think about like kids that grow up with money. They don't really struggle until they get into their adulthood. And even then, when they're in their adulthood, are they struggling that much if their parents keep helping them out? I know a lot of people I don't know, but I know that a lot of people that are my age are buying houses and stuff because their parents let them stay at home without paying any rent. They didn't have to pay their way for a long time, and then they get into a place. And I suppose it's a positive. There's a sore spot for me because I didn't get that. But I think if I had kids, I would do the same thing because, you want to set them up and let them set themselves up for a great life. I hope that the only pain that my children have is through, relationship and hardship and like, because they tried to do something and they failed at it. And I hope that pain turns into power. I want them to know that they gave something a go and they failed at it and they learned how to not only be resilient from that, but how to approach it differently and create success and create meaning outside of that. And so I don't really know where I was going with any of that, but I think that's what I was talking about. Talking about the sad and the bad and the nitty gritty and the things that are difficult to talk about, but sort of allow for that growth and vulnerability. Because for me, my strength of character, and my tenacity and my resilience, and my integrity all sort of stem from my upbringing, my perspective, my relationships to parental figures, my relationships to my peers, mentors and so on. And so it becomes difficult because I don't want this to be a thing where I want this to be entertaining, where people can tune in every day and listen to, I guess, all the aspects of things I want to talk about. But it makes it difficult because I'm only trying to jam pack it. Like you're going to hear a maximum of 20 minutes of my voice in a day and a minimum of 10 minutes. And so it's really hard. You can't dive deep into these topics. And so on top of that, I don't have a script. I don't write anything down. Anything that I read out was written years ago or a long time ago. And that was my perspective as, I mean, I read the other day on authenticity, which was an excerpt of a poem, or I guess like a meditation that I wrote while I was on a train when I was coming into the next part of my career, where I was working as a store manager in retail, and then I was moving into a dual store role where I was in charge of 2 stores. So each store had less of my time. Each of the team, I had to try and create a culture across both of the teams. And so it was, it was a moment of authenticity. It was like, it was like a reminder to myself to be authentic. It's okay to come out of your house with a face on. Just remember to take it off at home. And because at the time I was going through this stress where I wasn't being vulnerable and I wasn't allowing myself to show weakness, and that was causing a lot of strain in my relationship at the time. And so I've grown from that, and that it becomes this point of conversation instead of a point of contention. And I think there's something beautiful in that and something empowering with that. And so I guess I wanted to talk today a little bit about a conversation my wife and I were having and have been having over the last little while. My wife and I are very mature for our ages. And I mean, not the most mature, and not like a brag, like, oh, we're better than other people. I don't care about that. I wish that I was able to be young. Sometimes I miss that I didn't have a childhood, as much of one as possible, as many of my friends had, because I was the man of the house. I had a single mum who was open about everything, including her habits and everything. We would talk about all sorts of things. And I just think that there was times where I felt more that I had to be a protector and a guardian for my mother. And because of that, I couldn't, I was always wary of not allowing myself to slip too far into childhood in a weird way. So like, in the same way that like I see my little cousins can bounce on a trampoline and bounce on like bouncy castles for hours, I'd be over it in 10 minutes because, it's the same thing. I didn't really play any sort of team sports or anything growing up. I did some swimming and stuff, but it was like, there was always this energy of like, I got to be home at a certain time. Even when I was out, I was a street kid when I was younger. And a street kid is in, I had friends in all the other houses. All the kids in the neighborhood would get out and play. And no matter where I lived, I'd make friends with the kids in the neighborhood because I didn't really like sitting inside and doing nothing. We didn't really have a computer. It was a communal computer. So if mum was using it, I couldn't. If Monica was using it, I couldn't. Sorry, my sister, Monica. And so it became this sort of thing where I'd be out doing things all the time. And Maddie, my wife, she has 2 siblings, and she had more people to hang out with. And so making friends with the neighborhood kids was a little bit easier because there was 3 kids that could make friends with other kids of all different ages, and they would hang out and they would do things. And then sometimes they'd just hang out with each other in the backyard, and they didn't really get out and do much. But one thing that we've been talking about, and it has been a point of conversation recently, because we like to be introspective and we like to talk freely about things that concern us and things that we've noticed, and especially things with our personalities, or things that she's noticed about my personality or vice versa. And we've been having this conversation about children who don't learn to cope with their emotions, who then turn into adults who try to fix that. And the classic scenario, mum and dad are tired. They've both worked all day. They've prepped dinner. They've cleaned the house. They're doing all this stuff. And then the kid starts crying inconsolably over something simple, like a sibling stole a chip or something stupid. And instead of working through that emotion with that child, they get sent to their room. They get punished almost for having feelings, for not understanding those feelings, for expressing those feelings. They just get sent to I guess, dwell on them until they resolve them themselves. And I don't think I need to say this, but children cannot do that without some sort of guidance. And so, because, and this is specifically for my wife, she said, because sometimes she got punished instead of spoken to about how she was feeling, it was just easier to turn any emotion that wasn't, sadness, frustration, anything else, to either just make the excuse I'm tired, or to get angry. Because with anger, you can just sort of blow it off. You can get angry, get heated, and then you get steamy and you let it all out. You just punch something or throw something, or you know what I mean. Anger can turn into a physical form. Same as sadness, but sadness is crying, right? The physical form of sadness is crying or weeping or whatever you want to say. So this anger, this frustration, you can just go for a run and you can let this energy out. This anger is just this ball of energy and you just get rid of it. But as a kid, when you're that angry and you get sent to your room, it festers and it bottles up. And then you don't want to talk about it because it's embarrassing. And I remember it being a huge point of conversation when Maddie and I got together. She would say, I don't like crying. Crying's for pussies. Only pussies cry. And it's interesting now because I'll sit here, and this morning we were reading a book, this book Tuesdays with Maury, and I'll get teary at certain points, or I'll sit there and I'll watch a video of military parents coming home and seeing their kids in school, and I'll cry. Or I'll watch a Facebook fight video, or I'll see something happen, and I just get teary and emotional on things. They surprise me, but I'm open to that, right? I'm not so fucking macho and masculine that I'm not able to cry, because it's a natural human thing. And I feel as though the less I cry and the less likely I am to get sad, the more likely I am to get angry. And I promised myself I never would. Maybe I'll tell that story one day, but there was a reason that I won't ever get angry. And I don't like getting angry. And it's because I can be very cruel to the people I love. And so in order to avoid that, I allow myself to show emotion and be emotional and be vulnerable. And a huge part of that is rationalizing and compartmentalizing, which I was taught at a young age. My mum would go through with me what my emotions were, why I was feeling a certain way. She would always ask me and expect me to be open. How was your day at school? Good isn't a good answer. I have to go into conversation about it. And a lot of the time, because mum would take us to and from school, we spent time growing up in after school care and school holiday care programs. And because mum would work, she was a single mum working full time, she couldn't take time off work. So we would get dropped off and then we would drive. We lived on the other side of Canberra. And so where we went to school in Garran was right across the road from the Canberra hospital. And where we lived was over in Gordon, which is 35-40 minutes away on the same road. So we would sit in the car every night and we would talk about our days. Mum would ask us about questions and we would engage with each other and we would have these beautiful moments. And then we'd get home and it would be light outside and I'd go outside and I'd play, or I'd go down to we had a little lake at the back of our house and I'd go yabbying or whatever I would do. Maybe I'd sit inside and I'd play Jack and Daxter on the PlayStation in my bedroom, or I'd hang out with my sister and mum and we'd watch The Biggest Loser when it first came out. And so, as much as I like to sit here and say that I didn't really get a childhood, I think a lot of it was I was just given an insane perspective from a young age. I knew right and wrong before I really knew anything else. And I couldn't, if you had have asked me at the age of 7 what right or wrong was, I wouldn't necessarily know how to explain it to you, but I wouldn't do the wrong thing. If that makes sense. I didn't want to test the water. If I was told not to touch the burning hot plate, I just wouldn't touch the burning hot plate because I understood that it was hot. You know what I mean? But a lot of kids don't have that, and then they hurt themselves, and then they cry, and then the emotion gets subdued by the parent being fed up or tired and not wanting or being willing to taking the time to engage with that child and teach them the process of rolling through those emotions. And so I find I find that to be a point of issue. Anyway, the reason we started talking about that was because today we were having breakfast at the coffee club in the Northland Shopping Centre here in Melbourne, in Preston or Reservoir. I don't know where that is specifically. And there was a lady in there, and she was just staring at me while we're eating breakfast. Now, it took me a little bit to realize that this woman was... I don't want to say... I don't want to say disabled more than I want to say disadvantaged. And I think that disadvantage was being sheltered as a kid and being taught a certain thing, I guess, about people. I don't know. She just seemed very wary of the people she was around. And maybe it's because she's been hurt before. Maybe I'm completely psychoanalyzing her and it's incorrect. But it just got us talking about, kids being brought up to believe one thing. And Maddie would talk about, the comments that her father would make about, I don't know, other female bodies, and or people with tattoos. I think she's made a comment before about how tattoos are disgusting. That person's a no hope. And then eventually Maddie started to think the same thing. People who get tattoos are useless. They're no good to society, this and that. And then she hit an age where tattoos are cool, and the people who had tattoos weren't that. And so how much of... I guess it comes back to that same thing. How much of what you know and think and say and do come from you? And how much are you thinking about that? And when you get sad or when you get angry, do you tend to lash out? And when you do lash out, do you regret that? And does that regret cause you to fall into a pit of despair and substance abuse? Do you drink, or do you smoke, or do you do party drugs and party every weekend so that you can stop thinking about all of this nastiness that you don't realize is the root cause of your problems, and that it stems from the fact that you've never sat with yourself and thought about the things you do and why you do them? And because it sucks. It's a shitty conversation to have, and I think I'll dive deep. We're only 12 days in, so I'll dive deep into times that I've been shitty and I regret it. And it's caused lasting damage to the relationships, especially people that I love. And in particular, my little sister. And if she listens to this, she'll know exactly what it is. And there were 2 times, and my sister's the only person who could have pushed me to those points. Until now where I've got my wife, but I'm regrettably, I did them. Thankfully, I did them. I can only feel sorry for myself for so long. The person that made those mistakes he lacks perspective. And the person I am today only gained those perspectives because of those mistakes. And so I guess I've managed to talk for 20 minutes. I guess the takeaway is who are you? And do you consider the things that you've done and the wrong that you've done? Do you ever think about why you do those things? Why do you get angry? Why is your first response to get angry? Why is your first response to get emotional? When you think someone is being rude or mean or is going to be sneaky, why is your first response to lash out first? Or push them away? I had a bad tendency of just completely cutting people out of my life that I felt were going to hurt me. And why do you do that? And do you think about that? Is it ever something that you consider? Is it something that you wished you could change? Is it something that you want to get better at managing? And also in the last minute, I signed up for a gym today, and I'm feeling super pumped about it. I'm going to start getting in the gym a couple of days a week. I used to bodybuild when I was 18, and I use that in quotation marks. I just lifted weights and ate food, but I had the idea of being a bodybuilder, and I was trying to put on muscle, and I haven't been in years. I'm 27 now, so it's 9 years out of the gym, and I am pumped. So these podcasts are going to start getting maybe a little bit more gym oriented or weightlifting oriented. Who knows? But we're coming up on 20 minutes. I'm gonna have to cut myself off. Hope everyone has a good day, and it is the 12th of January 2023. See you.